Ches of the Maimer, middle of Ois Dalad, and we were starting to speak about the idea of Nesias Roish Legulgloisa, that the idea of the head goes on intellect, and we need to raise it up to a level that's beyond intellect. And that is the idea of Su'as Roish, that the reason why he uses the term in the Torah instead of other terms that are used in the Torah. For counting, he uses the word Su'u, which means raising up. And even while raising up the head doesn't stop being a head. So he starts, first of all, explaining this in Avodas HaAdam, that the idea of the head is Havana Vasagir, the idea of Torah. And because that's the place how we understand the Torah is with the brain and the head. So he went off a little bit about the idea, but we do know that for Torah to remain with the person, he needs to be arucha beramache vorim. It has to be set up throughout all our limbs. We have to use our entire body in the study of Torah and so on. But that is only not because the body is doing the study of the Torah. That's only for it to be retained for memory's sake. But the idea of Torah itself, that's the idea of the head, that's the idea of the brain. And that brain that's in the head, that idea of Torah, that needs to be raised up to a higher level. That needs to be raised up legulglotum, to the level of the skull. What is the level of the skull that's higher than the brain, higher than Torah? So that's what we're about to explain now on line 15, last two words on the line. And the service of a person, Hashem. What is the idea? Bringing up the Torah that he's learning to the skull, that the job of the skull is not just that it encompasses, but it also protects the brain that's in the head. So he says, that's the level of davening that precedes Torah study. The obligation to make a bracha in Torah before one learns. In other words, the idea of tefillah in general is encapsulated by the idea that as great as Torah is, one needs to be cognizant of Hashem before one studies Torah. That's why one makes a bracha on Torah. What is also the idea of bracha? Bracha is about drawing down and connection. That the idea of making a bracha before davening, and tefillah even more so. Tefillah is also about hatoifel klicheres, about joining together different things. Is lechaber es hatoida and nois not Torah, to ensure by davening, by having the level of davening before Torah learning, we are ensuring to join the Torah with the one that gave the Torah. Like we find concerning David HaMelech, the Zohar says the Lashon, or actually it's a Sefer HaBoyer says the Lashon, that David HaMelech would join the Torah with Hashem, because as we'll soon explain the idea behind it. Therefore, Abba bin Yamin used to say, and used to make sure that the hey philosophy smuchal mitasi, that my davening should be close to my bed, meaning it's the preceding of tefillah before Torah learning. Not that as soon as he gets up, he does other things, even if the other thing is Torah learning. But prior to Torah learning, the first thing he needs to have is davening. How come? Why is it necessary to have tefillah before Torah? Torah is an awesome activity. Why do you need to have davening before that? Because through tefillah, which is the idea of a person nullifying his existence, putting his existence on the side, putting his being and self on the side, so then the study of Torah will be done in an appropriate manner when it's done without ego, as we will go on to explain. Because then if he puts his own ego on the side, and he will not go in a crooked manner, he will not follow along in a crooked manner. Moshe's Bar Leila was explained in a previous mind. The top of page test. Only when the Torah study is in such a manner that his goal is he's trying to figure out, I want to know what Hashem's will is over here. It's not about his understanding, his comprehension. In other words, he's not focused on his own self, on his own ego. Will I come up with chidushim? Will I come up with novel interpretations? Rather, my core focus is Hashem's will. Obviously, I need to bring this will down to me so that I can understand, I can perceive, I can grasp Hashem's will. That is what he's using his intellect. But his first focus is on Hashem's will. How does he have that first focus on Hashem's will? Because he davened beforehand. Before that, because that connection that he had with Hashem beforehand. So now he wants to manifest that connection in the Torah. Zai, line 3. So then the way how he's studying Torah is he has no ulterior motives. He's not bribed by it, meaning he doesn't have anything to convince him, listen, you are a great genius and you need to come up with new insights. And if you're just going to follow what it says, you're not going to come up with great insights. So the person puts his ego aside and all he wants is to connect with Hashem's will and bring Hashem's will down into understanding. Then he reaches the truth of the truth in his Torah study. That ensures that his Torah study is really true understanding of Hashem's will. Similar to what's explained concerning the expression in the Zohar, that the relationship between Chachma and Bina is like a point inside a palace or a big chamber. Chachma is only a point, only a nekuda. But it needs to be in that big chamber, in that big palace of Bina. Why does it have to be there? Seemingly, once I get the point of Chachma, so now I leave the Chachma behind and I go on to Bina. So the Rebbe says it doesn't work that way. Because through keeping one's eye and focus the whole time on the point of Chachma, so then we protect and guard the Gambis Pashas the Bin Eichol, even when one expands the idea in the level of Bina, in the quote unquote palace or chamber, will not go in a crooked manner. It's possible that once an idea is given birth, the person can go off the rails with it. The Bina can go on and on and on, and it loses the whole direction where he was planning to go. And sometimes even the person themselves or other people listening will say, what was the point? Where are you going with this? Because he's expanded and expanded and expanded, and he lost sight of the point. The Nekuda Be'chala, by keeping one's eye the whole time on the Nekuda of Chachma, that ensures that the Bina shouldn't go off the rails. That he shouldn't just go off topic and this and that and the other, and losing sight of where he's planning to go. In a similar vein, in the Torah, we can sometimes get so lost in our own self-made buildings of understanding all different types of topics that we lose the concept that we're trying to determine, we're trying to bring down Hashem's will. For that, we need to have the tefillah before Torah to ensure that the Torah is kept on the rails, that we're focused on bringing Hashem's will down to fruition in such a way that I understand it, and so on. Once we've established that has to be the tefillah preceding the Torah, which is Etzrash b'nei Yisrael legulglotum. You're taking the head, which is Havana Vasaga, the idea of Torah, and you're raising it up to the level of the skull, the level of bittul, the level of connecting with Hashem's will, which is done through davening. So now the Rebbe is going to go, like often he does, and like make some fine distinctions of Torah and Tefillah within the Torah itself and within davening itself. Let's go on to line 10, page test. Important to note, Shakim Shah Torah closed the process Namra as soon as the Torah was said, both in a general manner and also in a detailed manner, in a specific manner. In other words, so there is general divisions. Torah is here, Tefillah is there. But since there's also details of the generalizations, so in Torah itself, you're going to find the Tefillah, and in Tefillah itself, you're going to find the Torah of Tefillah. You're going to have the Torah of Tefillah and the Tefillah of Tefillah. You have the Tefillah of Torah and the Torah of Torah. In the Gamba Torah Gufa Yashli in that Tefillah, also in Torah itself, there's the idea of davening the Gamba Tefillah Gufa Yashli in that Torah, and in Tefillah itself, there's also the idea of Torah. They say like this. But Torah Gufa, when we look at Torah itself, in Mavad Etzem Havon of Asagish is we not Torah, but Torah Gufa, in addition to the very understanding and comprehension part of Torah, the intellect part of Torah, which that is the Torah part of Torah. There's the idea that at the time of his study, his focus is, he's always focused, I want to know, and I want to make sure not to move away from the will of the master of the will. By the way, just to give an example of where a person could be studying Torah and be completely divorced from Hashem's will, is what the Gemara says, that there could be a diligent student that knows how to make a sheretz, which is explicitly said in the Torah to be tamei, and he could make it. He could find 150 reasons, obviously based on the logic of Torah, why it should be tahir, why it should be pure. Here you see a case of a person using his avon of asagi in Torah itself, going contrary and completely off the lines of where the Ratzon HaElyon is. So again, there's the understanding part of Torah, that's the Torah Shabbat Torah, and then there is, like in the back of his mind, there is constantly the focus, I want to make sure that I get Hashem's will right and correct. By the way, this is a lot of times, or this is more so evident in one needing to derive a halacha. A Rav that needs to give a psak din, needs to give a ruling, needs to derive a halacha that's something not explicitly stated, not in Gemara, not in Rishonim, not in Shroinim, not in Gemara, and he needs to apply his mind to use the tools that Torah has given him to see what would be the halacha in this case. If he's truly focused on the idea of Hashem's will, so that will be his focus over here. Not will I be able to come up with all types of novel interpretations, but let me see what is Hashem's will over here. What does Hashem want that should be the halacha in this case? Of course, he's using the tools of intellect, but his focus is on Hashem's will. Then the Rebbe says it in Yiddish in the parentheses, line 16. Dem is a fakofim, and dem liegt der, und das in the geya. This is what he's passionate about. This is what he's involved in, and this is what matters to him. Now, we were saying that in Torah, there's a Torah part of Torah, and there's a Tefillah part of Torah. So this part that he's focused and he wants, and he's the whole time trying to derive what is Hashem's will. So in Tefillah Shabbat Torah Gufa, that is the Tefillah part of Torah. Same but Tefillah, so too in Tefillah we have both things: the Tefillah Shabbat Tefillah and the Torah Shabbat Tefillah. In but idea of meditating in the exaltedness of Hashem, blessed be He, the shiftless Adam, and how low the person is. That this is brought down Shulchan Aruch, and in a similar vein in Rambam and other places, that this is something that a person, an attitude, an understanding, an appreciation that a person needs to enter davening. It's tzaddik is looking at film that has to be before davening, and the more I am thinking about it, in other words, like learning chassidus, which brings us to the appreciation of the exaltedness of Hashem and how bottled we are. These are all Torah parts of davening. The Chassidus that we're learning before davening does not violate what Abba Binyamin said, that he goes straight from his bed to davening, because the Chassidus that we're learning before davening, this is to help us daven. It's called, like he's calling it right now, Torah Shabbat Tefillah. So we are not violating that thing that Abba Binyamin always struggled to have davening immediately close to his bed without Torah learning. This is a Torah of davening. The Chassidus that we're learning before davening is the Torah of davening. U'inyan, not Torah Shabbat Tefillah, he says in line 21. After we have the Torah Shabbat Tefillah, the studying Chassidus, studying about the greatness of Hashem, we come to the actual Tefillah itself, Tefillah Shabbat Tefillah. And in Tefillah itself, there's many levels, Ad L'Tfil Shemoneh Esrei, until we reach to the part of davening with Shemoneh Esrei, Ki Av L'Kama Ma'arei, that we're standing like a servant before his master. It's not even possible. He's standing at such bittul and attention that he wouldn't even make a circle in the air as a signal to someone, because he's completely buff. So despite the fact that we just now said there is Tefillah Shabbat Torah and there's Torah Shabbat Tefillah, now zooming out, but in general, in Torah in Yanam, one of us on the top of page Yud, Torah's idea of understanding and comprehension, Rosh, the head. By the Adam's Tefillah, and through the prefacing of davening, not that we daven before learning, becomes the idea that you raised up the head, you raised up the Torah learning to the skull, to the level of Ratzon Elyon, the level that's beyond the level of bittul that's necessary, so that the Torah learning should be the way it's appropriate. So this answers the question that we had: why are we focused specifically on, once we've established that he uses the term su'u, which means raising up? Why is it so important to raise up the head more so than the rest of the parts of the body? Why not the foot? Why not the body? And we said that normally when you raise up something, you don't raise it from the top, you raise it from the bottom. Because if you raise it from the top, you raise it from the middle, it doesn't always raise up completely. But over here, the point is not about the rest of the body. The leg, as we said, has an innate bittul, and you do not need to ensure that it is impacted with bittul, as opposed to the head, which by itself does not have that innate bittul that needs to be raised up, and that is done through the davening before learning Torah. Any questions before we go on? Line 3 on page Yud, second paragraph on the page. Now he speaks about once we've accomplished, once we've done this level of Etzrash, we take the level of Torah learning and we elevate it also through the after the elevation and ascent, at the level of your skulls, at the level of the bittul, through the prefacing and davening before learning. So Torah study remains in the state of the head. We mentioned this as well earlier in the Maimon. It's not just about raising the head, and then the head stops being a head, it starts becoming a skull. No. Even once we raise the head to the level of the skull, it still remains a head. Through Inyan, Havana, Vasogya, it's the idea of understanding and comprehension. We're not departing from the understanding part of Torah. We're raising it up to a higher level. We're giving it a foundation on Hashem's will, but we still need the Torah study in a way that's understood and comprehended and intellectual. In Moi, for example, he says a similar type of idea that we know about something else, that we have to preface our Torah study with something else, but that preface does not take away from the fact that the Torah study is an intellectual pursuit. Like, for example, the preparation of a person totally devoting his life to Hashem before he begins learning, which means that the person feels and recognizes that he wants to connect with Hashem, and because he wants to connect with Hashem, he is studying Torah for the sake of that connection. Before Betanya, like explained in Tanya, the main preparation that we're learning the Torah for Hashem's sake, that is li'ikuva, that is necessary. La'akiv is usually used when we're talking about other things that need to be lishma. There are different mitzvahs that need to be done for the sake of a mitzvah or for the sake of the person. It says, for example, the term is used in writing a get, writing a Jewish bill of divorce. It has to be written shma and shmai. But the point is, while you're doing the activity, whatever activity needs to be lishma, you're not usually, your brain is not big enough to be able to contain the mind space for the activity that you're doing and having a mind lishma. So when do we have to have a mind lishma? Before you're about to start. The same thing when it comes to Torah study, it's b'tchilas halimud v'bein, that this idea that I want to connect with Hashem and I'm devoted to Hashem, and this is why I'm sitting and learning Torah. By a Beinani, we'll soon explain the difference between a Beinani and Tzaddik over here. By a Beinani, this is before he studies Sha'achanazu, he koydem halimud, this preparation is before he is sitting down to study Torah. Koydem haskalas klaus halimud, before the beginning of the general idea of learning. And the Rebbe also adds, but the Rebbe says in Tanya, v'chein betchilas kol shah v'shah, so at the beginning of every hour of learning, mitzad shinuya tzirufim, because of the different combinations of the hamshachas that come down. We know every single hour in the day shines a different siruf, a different combination of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, and by night it's the combination of the letters of Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud, which means there are different energies of Hashem that come down every different hour of the day. So at every hour, the Beinani also as well has to be, has to have like something go off in his head, a certain recognition. I am learning because I want to be close to Hashem, because I'm devoted to Hashem, because etc., etc. Aval be'es halimud, how they called iske ba'avanas v'asagas shalom in line 13. When he's actually studying, he cannot, split his mind into two. He has completely absorbed and immersed in the topic, in the concept that he's learning. So there's again this type of before and after. We'll soon explain how that comes to here. The exception to this rule about simultaneously being able to keep both thoughts in the head, so he says, when it comes to a tzaddik can have both things together. He can have both constantly in his mind. While he's understanding the deepest topics and learning, he's in his mind having this kavanah, this intention, lishma. When it comes to the intention that he's doing this for the sake of Hashem, it is preparation before learning, as opposed to during the time of learning. Atzma itself, he's involved just in the understanding and comprehension of the matter. Now we can understand why the Rosh remains a Rosh. That's what it means even after it goes up to the level of the skull. Still in all, the Torah study remains in the state of a head. It's the level of understanding and comprehension, because the head has to remain a head. The same thing, the Beinani after or Bechlal, after having the davening, preceding the learning, you need to go to a level of still learning. You didn't lose your head. You didn't lose your mind. Now, once you've had the elevation, now the learning can be done in the appropriate manner. Line 20. Since the idea of raising the head to your skulls is the idea of Torah and davening. The head is the idea of the Torah learning, and feel as the raising of the head, like we mentioned earlier, meaning the whole piece right before. Therefore, it says that Hashem spoke in the wilderness of Sinai and the tent of meeting. Why is it necessary to go into the locations? There's many halachas, many dinim, many mitzvahs that it says in the Torah, but it doesn't identify the Yidden were located in this place when it was said. Yes, there are certain things that it says. It says when the Yidden were ba'arvis Moab, in the plains of Moab, Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to them, the Chumash Dvarim, etc. But in general, we don't identify a certain mitzvah with a certain location. Why over here, when it talks about the counting of the Bnei Yisrael, does it mention it? Midbar Sinai Bo'el Moued, because the wilderness of Sinai and the tent of meeting came Shnei Hanyan. These are the two aspects, top of page. The Torah, tefillah of Torah and davening. Or Bedrushim, like to explain the Mamarim, Psukim, Eilu on these Psukim. So the Mamarim, here he doesn't go into that. Perhaps at the next Maimer this week we're going to speak about it, but essentially, Midbar is the idea of a wilderness. It's a place of thirst, where we yearn, where we desire, we're thirsting for Hashem. It's also a level of bittul, the idea that there's nothing there in the Midbar that shows on the state of utter bittul, which is what davening is about, the nullification, Hashem's will. Sinai also is the lowest of all the mountains, also indicating bittul and self-abnegation, self-nullification. And then you have also the level of Oil Moued. Oil Moued is the idea of the tent of meeting. What was the central part and the core of the tent of meeting is the luchas that were there. The Rebbe brings down in other places that this is, the Rambam says, the main idea of the Mishkan is the place where the Shekhinah resided, and the Shekhinah resided in the place of the luchas. The luchas are Sers Hadibras, the core and the source of the entire Torah. So therefore, these two things, Midbar Sinai and Oil Moued, they represent Tefillah, they represent Torah, just like Su'as Rosh Legulglotum means the idea of doing Torah only after the preface of that.